and welcome to you all. This is Behind the Music with London Symphonia. My name's Andrew Chung. I'm artistic producer of the Symphonia, and this is our Behind the Music just before our concert titled By the Sweet Power of Music. And today I have with me our concertmaster, Joe Lanza. Hello, Joe.
Hey, Andrew.
And I've got guitarist, lute player, plucker extraordinaire, Terry McKenna. Hello, Terry.
Hi, guys. How's everybody?
Great stuff. So for our audiences, they may not know Terry as well, quite as well as Joe. So I'm just going to read a little bit about what Terry brings to this concert. So Terry performs a wide range of musical styles on period and modern guitars and lutes. He is a past and longtime member of the Toronto Consort for about 30 years. Are you a founding member then?
No.
Not a founding member. Wow.
It had been going for 6 or 7 years before I joined. Yeah.
Awesome. And you've also done a ton of work with the Toronto Mask Theatre and Kitchener-Waterloo's Folia Ensemble, as well as directing many of his own projects. Terry has been a member of such crossover groups as Ensemble Polaris and Push the Baroque.
Yeah, you got it.
Thank you. In addition to perform many contemporary scores by a multitude of Canadian composers.
Yeah.
He's recorded for film and for TV, on CD, on CBC, on CDC. No, I'm just making that one up. And he's nurtured the next generation of pluckers while teaching at Wilfrid Laurier University. And he's also performed for 35 seasons at the Stratford Festival. So welcome, Terry.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's awesome that you're on this concert. Now, you will note that we do not have our special guests, not that we're not special, but we don't have our special guests, Martha Henry and Rod Beatty, joining us for this pre-concert talk because we don't want to give it away. We want to keep under wraps what they're going to illuminate us with in terms of Shakespeare and what he thought about art and music. So let's just kind of rewind a little bit and how we got to this point, Joe. This was not originally the concert we had programmed for this season. Originally on March 13th, we had programmed Susie LeBlanc and her Acadian story. And then what happened?
Well, that was a really special program, and Susie and I had been spending many weeks planning the details of that. But Susie fell ill, not COVID, luckily, but she had to cancel. And we were left with an open spot and not too much time to fill it. So you and I put our heads together, and you pulled a couple of shows from your Inner Chamber series off the shelf, and we talked and chose this one.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons why we chose this show about Shakespeare and the music associated is it fit the orchestra that we had ready for the previous Susie LeBlanc concert almost exactly. In fact, the only person that we changed is we exchanged a percussionist for Terry. And that's
always a good move.
Always a good move. Always
it is so difficult to imagine doing a show about early English theater music without a lute. It's just, actually, it's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
It just wouldn't work.
It's illegal.
And Susie will be joining us, hopefully, in the fall. I hear she's feeling better already, and she's now on the West Coast, so we'll bring her back this way, and we will do this concert, which is her incredible story. But yes, this concert, it's in the early music vein, and I was thinking, okay, well, our audience saw Rod Beatty most recently in our Baroque Insults show. I think that was just last season. And he was really funny. He was very, very entertaining. And he's just got a terrific delivery. And so, I talked to Rod and I said, Rod, can we reformat this and let's what about doing this as an orchestral show? And he agreed. He thought, yeah, this is really interesting material. To talk about Shakespeare, Shakespeare never wrote down what he thought, but he certainly gave a lot of clues in his plays. And so what we were looking for was, okay, what did he think about music and about art? And you know, Rod came up with this premise that that when music is very powerful, art is very powerful, and when it comes up with against everyday people and their everyday situations, it changes them uh, um, for better or for worse.
Mhm.
So that's the main premise of this concert. And when Rod agreed, and he suggested, "Oh, well, what about bringing Martha Henry?" And I was like, "Martha Henry? Well, this is amazing." And then so I was speaking with both of them, and they're both really keen to be involved. And then we thought, oh, we'll give a little bit of a nod to Christopher Plummer during our concert. And so it's started with an original concept, and it's kind of grown. And then I gave Terry a call because Terry helped to co-curate that original Interchamber show. And thankfully Terry agreed, and then we are win-win-win. So Terry, can you just tell me a little bit more about why you're on the program? I view you as a specialist, a little bit of a connection. You've got a strong connection to the music of Shakespeare's time through your work with Toronto Consort, especially their medieval to early Baroque music. Tell me a little bit more about this musical style.
Well, thank you for inviting me to the program for sure. And yes, the instruments that I play for this repertoire, mainly the lute, this instrument was so commonly used that it's natural for it to appear in a musical setting, either in a play or some private entertainments. And there's so much repertoire that specifies the lute or another plucked instrument to accompany singers. And but it can go broader than that. Very often, a bass instrument of some type would join in and strengthen the bass line. They were pretty flexible too with the way songs were scored. So very often just one voice and one accompanying instrument, or it could be supplemented with other voices. They liked variety, I think. You can see that in the repertoire.
And
So,
then in terms
yeah.
of where music intersected with theater specifically, we look at the plays of Shakespeare, and there's certain indicators, right? That there's music to be there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's an interesting question because Shakespeare certainly used music maybe in three main ways. One is sort of externally, something that sets the stage. It could be a fanfare coming from off stage. As we know, there are many wonderful songs, moving songs that express the feelings of characters and important issues. But Shakespeare referred hundreds of times to the popular ballads of the day because the audience would know these ballads, would know the tunes and would know the references, and that would amplify the characters. So it's a really interesting thing that he was doing. And it wasn't necessarily sort of high art music. He really liked the popular music and made use of it, in addition to some of the more arty stuff, if I can put it that way.
Right. So in terms of referencing, it's just so I get this clear in my head, in terms of referencing that pop music of the day, he never wrote the musical score on his plays, but
No.
he would choose song lyrics, or were the lyrics his own?
He would quote popular song lyrics, just one line. He'd even garble them to get a laugh, probably, because the audience would know what the real words were. And yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's really fun once you get into it. And I mention that Ross Duffin who is a graduate from Western University, wrote a fantastic book where he collected all of the Shakespeare references and researched all the ballad tune, or not so much the tunes, but the ballad lyrics that Shakespeare alludes to. So you can look up any of Shakespeare's play and look at all these references, often very oblique references, to the music of the time. So it's fascinating.
And I remember when we first curated this show together, I remember looking at that book. It's an amazing compendium.
Yeah.
And it gives you just great ideas and different connections that you can make. And, you know, so some of these songs that we chose for our guest tenor, Bud Roach, to sing, come from lyrics that were we found directly in the plays.
Yeah.
That are being mentioned, and there's 4 plays that are mentioned as part of this particular program, and then some of this musical material we just thought it would suit well for the moment and the points that Rod and Martha are making. So was there any orchestral music at the time of Shakespeare? Like, was orchestra a thing?
Well, there was chamber ensemble music, for sure. And often, well, there were sort of 2 rough categories, like instruments and unlike instruments, or broken consorts. So you might have a group of lute, cittern, flute or recorder, violin, bass gamba could be one broken consort. Then you could have a whole consort, which would be a group of viols. The viol, as you know, is the fretted but bowed string instrument that was very popular at the time. I don't know if it was a precursor to the violin. Not really. They had a coexistence, didn't they?
Yes.
I think that the violin finally fought its way to the top. Have I got that right?
More or less, yeah.
More or less. And the lute fought its way to the bottom eventually. Anyway, yeah. So there was those sorts of groups, and the courtly entertainments had greater resources than when Shakespeare's plays were produced in public theater. There wasn't as much resource to put into, so probably fewer instruments, that kind of thing. But in the courts, they could beef it up a little bit, make it more extravagant.
And just touching on, just moving back to the songs that our audience is going to hear. They're going to hear "If Music Be the Food of Love" by Purcell. That's an obvious one. And "Time Stands Still" by John Dowland's gorgeous, gorgeous song. And we're using that in relation to The Winter's Tale. "Take, Oh, Take Thy Lips Away" by John Wilson. That is not from Shakespeare's text. So we're bringing that one in to make a point. "Under the Greenwood Tree," it's by a modern interpreter and writer, Bert Carrier.
Yes,
another
alumni.
Yes, yes, of course. His name's on that wall, the Wall of Fame, in the cafeterias area.
Yep.
And then there's songs from the Fairy Queen, and we're going to touch on that in a second, Joe. Yeah, I mean, these are very colorful songs, and their song titles are very suggestive and evocative too, right?
Yeah.
So, Joe, when we were talking and about making this program for orchestra, where did you start? I mean, you've been doing the lion's share of the research and bringing it to an orchestral context. Take us through how that all went down.
Well, when you pulled this show off the shelf, what you had was music that could be performed by a small ensemble, and that fits what Terry was saying. This music was written a few decades after Shakespeare, but not so long after. So the traditions and the aesthetic were not forgotten. Let's put it that way.
And there's 2 main pieces, right, that the orchestra is participating in.
Exactly. So there is Purcell, which is the Fairy Queen, otherwise known as A Midsummer Night's Dream. So the Fairy Queen is a twist on Midsummer Night's Dream. And of course, we know that that Shakespeare set A Midsummer Night's Dream in words for theater. And then Purcell's teacher, Matthew Locke, from him we drew us a musical setting of The Tempest. So a little bit older, but of the same period, a little later in the 17th century. What's really cool here is, Shakespeare, to me, is kind of at the very beginning of what we would now consider the repertoire of the modern theater. And I feel like for orchestral music, that when you are talking about people like Locke and Purcell, it's the same thing. You won't hear orchestral music normally that is much before that. And I find this music really powerful in a similar way to the way Shakespeare's words are powerful. It's very deep, and sometimes it has a certain reserve and subtlety to it. So it's not so much on the sleeve. A lot of the powerful meanings of Shakespeare's words and allusions are things to be reflected on. And I think what's very cool about the music of Purcell is that the real power is in the harmony.
Yeah.
So for the average listener who doesn't know a lot about music, they just know this music is incredibly beautiful, but they might not be able to put their finger on exactly what it is. And it's sort of embedded in the music. The way it resonates at a very deep level is what makes this music so powerful. And I think also what makes it so popular among musicians, because there's a depth to the beauty that really draws us in. But you have to think about it for a second. Why is this music so powerful? And it's deeply embedded in the harmony.
And it's not by accident, it's intentional. The composer is doing this intentionally to affect the listener in a particular way.
Yes, and that is a very important aesthetic idea in Baroque music, that by going about our performance in a particular way, that we can elicit in you, the audience member, certain emotions. There's a whole doctrine about that was very well understood in the Baroque period. So that's what we're going to set about doing, is creating in each piece a particular emotion. And hopefully if in the way that we play it, we get the music to resonate sufficiently, you will very clearly feel that emotion.
I love it.
It's kind of a wonderful idea.
It's a wonderful idea. It really is. It really is. And, for the modern day listener, I think we just bring our imagination and bring our just perk our radar up, right? To full awareness, and just take that in, and those subtleties and that harmony.
Yeah.
And I think that's the pleasure in it. And then just taking a couple steps back, I just wanted to make this clear that The Tempest, the piece by Matthew Locke, wasn't written for a performance of Shakespeare's work. This was written for a reimagining of The Tempest, complete with another character to add it in just for, convenience. It's like taking a book and then adapting it for movie, and then you make adjustments as you will to bring it up to modern day sensibilities and it's understandableness, if that's a word, which it's not, if you know what I mean. And then I think in the same way, that's what happened with the Fairy Queen. So it's not exactly that this was designed for to accompany Shakespeare's play. It was designed to be its own thing, another reimagining of this wonderful tale. So, you know, we're just as a wrap up point, Terry, you've worked for 35 years at the Stratford Festival, and you've seen the dynamic of okay, they announce a Shakespeare, you know, 3 or 4 Shakespeare plays are going to be in a season, and then you're reading the headlines. You're like, oh, okay, this director's been chosen. Oh, okay, this composer's been chosen. And as a member of the band, tell us what that's like. Like, do you have input? Are you waiting to kind of be told what the flavor will be, and what's the range of music that's used?
Well, actually, my first season was 1975. I'm not sure you were born yet there, Andrew, but anyway.
Yeah, and the following year.
Anyway, I think one of the things that I certainly, when I first started playing here, I was amazed at the variety. And I discovered in myself that I like to learn to play different instruments. And I found myself getting so excited when Berthold Carrière said that he would want a mandolin in such and such a tune. And I thought, okay, yes, I can learn to do that. Much harder than you think it is, I'll tell you right now. But yeah, you know, it depends where the director and his or her collaborator, the composer, are going to go. And I think it's really led by the director, and the composer is there to bring the vision and the style and the affect to the surface. And they develop really a wonderful relationship. I remember Bert used to tell a story about Louis Applebaum, one of the great Stratford composers. And I was amazed when I heard this story, but Bert would tell how when the director said to Lou, you know, this scene change is just too long. And Bert would relate how Lou would just tear the paper in half and say, how's this? Is this good enough? And he would get rid of all this great music in a second.
Wow.
The needs of the time. And at the time I thought, gee, how could you do that? You know, all this wonderful, but no problem. It was because the play and the direction was paramount. Yeah. So anyway, it was a lot of fun, and there's great adaptability. And from time to time, I was asked about something a little more specific about, I remember once I came on stage before the play, Two Gentlemen of Verona, and just played for 10 or 15 minutes as people came into the theater.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just because it was the right thing to do, and I enjoyed it. Yeah.
And
so,
not uncommon, actually, for at that time, right? You would have music as people were coming in, live music for sure.
Absolutely. And then at the end, they'd have a jig. And these actors that you just saw getting murdered on stage would all stand up and start dancing together. And that would be the end of the show. I haven't seen that at Stratford. No, I have seen that at Stratford.
Well, and I've read that there's some speculation that some of the music that the orchestra will play, both introductory pieces from the Tempest and also from Midsummer Night's Dream or the Fairy Queen, that music might have been used for when people were coming into the theater as well.
Yes.
Yep.
And that one particular piece, oh, it's my favorite thing on the whole program. It's the curtain tune from the Tempest. It's this amazing transformative music, and it's the curtain tune when the curtain would come up. And I think we're using it at the end because it is so significant. It's so striking, and we can't say any more, else that'd be giving it away what's going to happen in the program. But thank you, Joe. Thank you, Terry, for joining me today. This has been a pleasure doing a bit of a deeper dive into the music to this program by the sweet power of music. Thanks for joining me.
Absolutely.
And And then for our for people who would like to see this concert, this will be performed on March 13th. Our whole season is live streamed. This particular concert is live from Metropolitan United Church in London, and the show is at 7:30. And yeah, we hope you can join us. All right, thanks, guys.
You're welcome.
You then.